Good morning. Bloomberg News reporting today that two federal judges temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's administration from enforcing parts of his order to halt immigration from 7 Middle Eastern countries. This after a day in which students, refugees, and dual citizens were stuck overseas or detained, and some businesses warning employees from those countries not to risk leaving the United States. The Washington Post headline says the ban has caused a worldwide furor, and this is what it looked like at a number of U.S. airports around the country, including JFK in New York, Washington Dulles, and in San Francisco. The New York Times saying the ban resulting in chaos, the London Guardian calling it confusion, but National Review says not so fast, calling it the right approach. It is Sunday morning, January the 29th. We're going to begin with your calls and comments on the weekend developments involving President Trump's executive order. 202 is the area code, 748-8000. That's our line for Democrats, and 202-748-8001 for Republicans. If you're an independent, the number to call is 202-748-8002. Send us a tweet at C-SPAN WJ, and a number of you already weighing in on our Facebook page at facebook.com/C-SPAN. And good Sunday morning. Thank you very much for being with us. As we said, this is the headline this morning from a number of leading newspapers, including the Washington Post, as the refugee ban causes a worldwide furor. The piece writes the following: confusion and concern among immigrant advocates mounted throughout the day as travelers from a number of Middle East countries were detained at U.S. airports or sent home. A lawsuit filed on behalf of two Iraqi men challenging President Trump's executive action, which we should point out was signed on Friday, initially cast as applying to refugees and migrants. But as the day progressed on Saturday, administration officials confirming that the sweeping order also targeted U.S. legal residents from those named countries, green card holders who were abroad when it was signed. Also subject to being barred entry into the U.S. are dual nationals, or people born in one of 7 countries who hold passports even from U.S. allies, such as the United Kingdom. The Washington Post goes on to write the virtually unprecedented measures triggering harsh reactions not only from Democrats, but also key sectors of the U.S. business community, leading technology companies recalling scores of overseas employees and sharply criticizing the president, legal experts forecasting a wave of litigation over the order, calling it unconstitutional, and lawyers and advocates for immigrants are advising them to seek asylum to Canada. That this morning from the Washington Post. We'll hear from the president yesterday. He spoke to reporters from the Oval Office, but first let's hear from you. Rosemary is beginning the conversation, Republican line from Napoleon, Michigan. Your reaction to all of this. Good morning.
Yes, it is very sad that people are over-exaggerating and blowing this out of proportion like they do every time Trump does something, President Trump, whether he does something good or he does something bad, they're going to criticize him. This is a big mess that he did not create. He has advisors that have been advising him. He's following the Constitution, and it's very, very, very sad for our country.
Rosemary from Michigan, thank you for the call on this map, giving you an indication of those 7 countries involved: Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Not on the list, Egypt, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. Let's go to Tad joining us from Rhode Island, our line for independence. Good morning to you, Tad.
Good morning, Steve. I am married to a former refugee from Cambodia, and she has blessed my life. When I was watching the news from JFK Airport yesterday, the crowd was chanting, "No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here." And I began crying because if my wife had been prohibited from coming here, I would never have known the joy of my life. And I think if Donald Trump is not impeached by the Republicans, he'll probably be taken out of the White House in a straitjacket. Thank you for your time, Steve.
Front page of the New York Times, judge blocking Trump on the order involving refugees, and the caller from Rhode Island talking about the crowd at New York's JFK Airport, and that is the front page picture, also available online at nytimes.com. On the Democrats line, Linda is next from Mississippi. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. It's just confused and chaos. There are ways do whatever he wants to do. But the actions he took are unconstitutional. They complain and moan about Barack Obama in executive orders. This man do 2 or 3 every day since the 9 days he's been in office, and he's caused nothing but confusion with this country, hate-filled statements, and sitting there looking like a big important man. He's an important man, but he got to realize that what he does has constitutional, unconstitutional. He can't do what he wants to do. He's not a dictator. He asks no one. He goes from his gut. Before he is through, this country will be in turmoil, in wars, and just everyone is afraid because the Republicans let him do this, but he can do whatever he wants to do. They say nothing. We all should be afraid, very afraid.
Linda from Mississippi, thanks for the call. Again, you can send us a tweet. This is what it looks like on our Twitter page, some of the scenes from airports around the country, and our Twitter handle is at C-SPAN WJ. The president yesterday from the Washington Post in the Oval Office, conferring with world leaders, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel, also Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's joined by Steve Bannon and White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer and Vice President Mike Pence. The New York Post, custom agents ignoring the judge enforcing Donald Trump's travel ban. The ACLU is getting multiple reports that federal custom agents are siding with the president, willfully ignoring a Brooklyn federal judge's demand that travelers from those 7 Muslim countries not be deported from the nation's airports. Details available online at nypost.com. Richard, you're next from Belmore, New York, also on the Republican line. Good morning.
Good morning. I think that Mr. Trump made a tactical error in not issuing an executive order defining who should be entitled to the protections of our laws and our Constitution. He should simply state that if you're a citizen or you're here on certain visas, you're entitled to the protections of our laws. And if not, you're not entitled to those protections. And we would eliminate a lot of the problems that we have with the judiciary trying to outdo what he's trying to do.
Richard, thank you for the call. Mark is next from Melbourne, Florida, Independent Line. Your reaction to all of this over the last 48 hours. What do you think, Mark?
Good morning, Steve. How you doing?
Good morning.
I think it's disgraceful what Trump is doing. From what I saw on the news last night, it's been settled law for 60 years that the refugees who are here legally, or foreigners who come here legally, cannot be banned. And this man is doing this. I mean, the terrorists are winning when he does this, when he closes the borders to legal immigration. So I think it's disgraceful, absolutely. And have a nice day.
Thank you. Andrew Walgreen says a plan to defeat ISIS. This is on our Facebook page at facebook.com/cspan. How about you start by not inflaming the entire Middle East with your worthless, inhumane immigration ban? Share your comments at facebook.com/cspan. Also on the Republican line, Bill, Pittsburgh, good morning. You're next.
Good morning. I'm calling on the Republican line to indicate that this is exactly what we heard we were going to get, and now we're getting it. It's a completely chaotic and idiotic way of dealing with what the concerns about immigration, and it's not simply a tactical error; it's an absolute disaster. This is not the way to deal with our problems, and it is why our nomination of Mr. Trump was an invitation to chaos. I sincerely hope that the Republicans in Congress and in the administration are are there to speak sanity, and I'm sorry, I'm being very general here. I wish I could be. I wish I could be more specific because, frankly, I'm foaming at the mouth a bit. This is the kind of thing that you put in immediately. Everything stops in an instant, and the train wrecks pile up behind it.
Bill, thanks for the call from Pittsburgh. Well, David French has another point of view. You can get it online at National Review, and this is the headline: Trump's executive order on refugees separating fact from hysteria. He says, quote, "This hysterical rhetoric about President Trump's executive order on refugees is out of control. Trump's order is not a betrayal of American values. Now is not the time for complacency. Now is the time to take a fresh look at our border control and immigration policies. Applied correctly," writes David French, "and competently, it can represent a promising fresh start and a prelude to new policies that protect our nation while still maintaining American compassion and preserving American friendships." And David French has 4 specific points. Again, you can read more details at nationalreview.com. Let's go to Middlebod from Jacksonville, Florida. Our line for Independence. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Middlebod. I want to say I support President Trump because it would be like one of our leaders 220 years ago in France, Jacques-René Hébert. He said, if you do not have a boundary around your country, you do not have a country. Plus, the people that are coming in, we're only after the illegal ones, the ones that want to cut our heads off. And we have to stop them, and if they should succeed, I hope it would never happen, if they should succeed, the people protesting outside against the President Trump would say, why is all this happen? And lastly, if you don't mind, I make it quick, the blacks, the African-American people calling in saying Trump is a racist, 94% of them voted for Obama. Do have a good day. Bonjour.
Middlebod from Jacksonville, Florida. And on our Facebook page, there's this from Joseph. "It was refugees that planned and executed the Boston bombing that killed 4 Americans. If your family was affected, you'd be singing a different tune." And there's this from Kurt who says, "Thank you, Obama, for destroying the Democratic Party and giving us Donald J. Trump, the savior of the Republic. Thank you, DNC, for stabbing Bernie in the back and making Hillary your nominee." Mark on the Democrats line from Philadelphia. Good morning.
Morning, Steve. You know, Steve, I grew up in West Philadelphia after World War II, and a good chunk of my neighborhood, they were refugees, you know, Jewish refugees from the Holocaust, Polish refugees, we had Ukrainians, we had, you know, White Russians from Belarus, and, you know, they kept coming to the country even into like the mid-'60s. We were having refugees, and we welcomed them. You know, in fact, I knew a lot of these families very well, and you used to talk to them and hear their stories. I'm sure they're the same stories you're hearing from these Syrian refugees. I mean, what's happened in my lifetime? What has happened? I don't even recognize my country anymore. We've gone from a country where we welcome these people where now, you know, we tell them don't even bother coming.
Mark, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Leo in Lafayette, Louisiana. Good morning. Welcome to the conversation.
Yes. Good morning to C-SPAN.
Go ahead, Leo. You're on the air.
Good morning. I find it very, very odd that when it comes to America and issues like this, we had issues with Kosovo, we had issues with Poland, and the only time that there is a ban on people coming to America is when it's dark-skinned people. I find that odd.
Leo from Louisiana. Brendan McPhillips has this tweet with Senator Bob Casey pointing out that he was in a tuxedo with tails, saying Senator Casey left wherever he was in white tie and tails to join the Philadelphia protest to get the detainees released. Good on him. Again, you can send us a tweet at C-SPAN WJ. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/C-SPAN. Here's more from the president yesterday as he spoke briefly with reporters in the Oval Office.
Totally.
And is it a Muslim ban?
Totally. It's not a Muslim ban, but we're totally prepared. It's working out very nicely. You see it at the airports. You see it all over. It's working out very nicely. And we're going to have a very, very strict ban, and we're going to have extreme vetting, which we should have had in this country for many years.
The president yesterday in the Oval Office also spending time speaking to world leaders, including a call that lasted, according to the White House, about an hour during the afternoon hours with Vladimir Putin of Russia. Back to your calls on this refugee ban. CBS News calling it chaos and confusion. Ronnie from Ardmore, Pennsylvania, Republican line. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Steve, and
good morning.
Happy New Year, sir.
And
good
to you
show,
too, sir.
As always.
Good to hear from you.
All right. Yes. And it looks like we got Pennsylvania Day here today. This is, I think, the third caller this morning right out of the chute. In 15
we love
minutes.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Senator Casey up there and all. My friend Mark from West Philadelphia, I'm probably about 5 minutes away from him, and I grew up in the same neighborhood. And, yes, but the people who came over assimilated right in. They didn't set up barriers and cause trouble. Now, for the liberals, I want you to get a pencil out real quick and a notepad, because I'm going to give you something to look up. You can Google it. U.S. Code, Title 8, Chapter 12, Subchapter 2, Part 2, Line F. That allows the president to ban, I'm paraphrasing now, ban anybody from coming to America for destructive reasons, if they're perceived or not. I mean, that's the laws. The president is not doing anything illegal, and that's the code. I'll recite it again for the people who don't have their pencils if you want, but the law is there. We're not on a suicide mission. He's only doing this temporarily. Until we get a grasp on what's going on and who's coming over, I mean, it just makes sense. We're not on a suicide pact here. We just had to check these people out. We bring them in. We're not against refugees, but we can't have a free-for-all. That's all. It's just logical. So enjoy the show. Keep
Ronnie,
up the good work, Mr. Trump. Steve, take care.
Thank you, Ronnie. A good point. It is a temporary ban that would last between 90 to 120 days per that executive order. A lot of you weighing in on our Facebook page, facebook.com/cspan. This is from Elizabeth. This is disgraceful and decidedly un-American. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Shame on Trump and shame on anyone who supports this. Cowards. Jeremy says, yesterday we became a nation of cowards. This ban will do nothing but generate more radical Islamists. And Mike says, people do not have the right to enter this country without following our laws. Instituting travel bans from terrorist nations is also something long overdue. The government job is to protect its citizens, not to appease other nations. And a statement yesterday from the House Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi, it reads as follows, quote, I expect a full report from the Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Customs as to the well-being and status of those who have been affected by the executive order. As the Statue of Liberty holds her torch to welcome high, there are tears in her eyes, writes Leader Pelosi, as she sees how low this administration has stooped in its callousness towards immigrant families and refugees who have trusted in the laws and protections of the United States. House Democrats will continue to defend our Constitution and demand smart and strong action to defeat terrorists while protecting religious freedoms. That from the House Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi. On the Democrats line is Deborah from Sarasota, Florida. Good morning. You're on the air. Good morning, Deborah.
Hi. I've been kind of a Democrat independent, but I always tell people vote for the person who's the most competent. I'm a retired teacher, and there are a lot of things going on in education that I don't agree with. They're having trouble getting teachers here in Sarasota. Everybody my age who's been a teacher forever is still in there. But when those teachers start retiring, if they don't get good people in education, I know that that's not what this is about necessarily. But when you put Trump in there, and when you talk about the Constitution and you see what's going on and how divided this country is, my Republican friend said, give the man a chance. Okay. In the first 2 weeks, what has he done? We've had protests in the streets for 2 weeks. We've had people upset. Now we have this going on in the airports. People are vetted for a long time, I'm starting to wonder, who are these people that voted for Trump? Talk about education. People came to this country for religious freedom. That's why they left. So I don't understand why everyone is so, up in arms about what religion people are. There are bad people everywhere. I have been being a teacher all my life. I'm more afraid, or was more afraid, of being killed in my classroom by some crazy guy with a gun. So I think we need to rethink what's going on and really start protecting the people that need protecting, which is people with little children that have no place to go. Thank you.
Deborah, thanks for the call. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, went to Boston's Logan Airport. This is what she tweeted on her page.
Make our voices heard all around this world. We will make our voices heard all around this world. We have all heard about this order that President Trump has given. We have all heard about this order that President Trump has given. It is illegal. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional. It will be overturned. It will be overturned.
From Senator Elizabeth Warren, she tweeted that out yesterday as she went to Boston's Logan Airport. The Heritage Foundation, by the way, has taken a look at exactly what has happened as a result of refugees coming from those countries, including the 7 targeted by the Trump administration. It's available on the Heritage website. It's called an interactive timeline of Islamist terror plots since 9/11. It takes a look at everything that's been happening since then, including the shoe bomber. Also, the situation with the Al-Qaeda conspiracy, the Lackawanna 6, and the Boston bombing at the marathon. Back to your calls. Lou, Independent Line, Norwalk, Connecticut. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I agree with Donald Trump's reset, and that's what he has to do. And I agree with the caller from Pennsylvania. He knows his facts. These other media outlets are just twisting the truths. And where were all these people when the Twin Towers were destroyed? And my family name is down at that memorial, etched in stone.
How so, Lou? Who passed away?
There was a DiMiglio that died in that plane crash. And when you go down there and you can feel it. And all the other people that were killed by terrorists, where were the protesters then? Elizabeth Warren, what credibility does she have? Nancy Pelosi needs to retire. If there wasn't such a open door policy, we wouldn't be in this situation we're in now. My family were immigrants after World War II, came from Italy.
Okay.
And we needed family members to vet for them, to prove who they were, to set them up in an apartment, help find a job, and get them situated here. It wasn't like you come into our country, taxpayers are giving them thousands of dollars to start a new life, Section 8 housing, medical, and that type of benefit. My family came here with the shirts on their backs and made a new life from nothing.
Lou from Norwalk, Connecticut, thank you for the call. New York Daily News. Again, New York JFK Airport, one of a number of airports where the protests and demonstrations lasted throughout the day, pointing out that there was a newlywed blocked from bringing her husband to Florida, legal U.S. residents barred from returning to their homes, and airline passengers booted from flights worldwide, calling it, quote, a wide-reaching ramification of President Donald Trump's refugee ban unfolding around the globe Saturday, spawning chaos, uncertainty, and criticism from the crackdown on refugees and predominantly Muslim nations. Brett is joining us from Lafayette, Louisiana. Welcome to the conversation. Good morning, sir. Brett, good morning. We'll go on to Connie. Good morning to you from Chicago, Democrats line.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for taking my call. I'm sitting here listening to, of course, all the other callers, and I'm listening to the hypocrisy. Now, this last caller you had, this man, talked about how his family immigrated here. They were immigrants. Mm-hmm. Most of the people in this country are immigrants. So my next thought is, how dare they talk about banning other immigrants from coming here. And then secondly, you look at who Donald Trump has surrounded himself with. Steve Bannon, an avowed white nationalist, has his ear. Okay, with that, I suppose the next thing that we're going to see are, book burnings, Kristallnacht? He's following the playbook of Hitler, line item by line item. And frankly, I'm not surprised, but I am thoroughly outraged. And thank you for taking my call.
Connie, thanks for weighing in from Chicago. This picture from the Washington Post yesterday is Donald Trump on the phone with world leaders, joined, as you said, by Steve Bannon, also his press secretary, Vice President Pence, and Reince Priebus, the new White House chief of staff. Congressman Charlie Dent is a Republican from Pennsylvania. He tweeted out yesterday the following, quote, "The federal government cannot provide immigration enforcement without the reliable assistance of state and local law enforcement." That reaction to the weekend developments, by the way, House Speaker Paul Ryan called it the right thing to do in a statement from his press secretary. And CBS News with this headline, "Chaos and confusion at airports as the immigration crackdown takes effect." The story available online at cbsnews.com as cheers broke out in a crowd of demonstrators outside of a Brooklyn courthouse as the decision effectively was announced. The order barring U.S. border agents from removing anyone who arrived in the U.S. without valid visa. Again, the countries involved: Iraq, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. It also covered anyone with an approved refugee application. That this morning from cbsnews.com. Let's go to Glenn in New York. Good morning, Independent Line.
Good morning, Steve. How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
There's so much stuff I could say. I don't want to get excited and start screaming and yelling at my TV. Number one, the law that Trump did with executive order is already in place. That law was already signed by Bush and Obama, by President Obama. And in fact, both of them use that law. But we have kept out refugees in the past for a whole host of different reasons, and there's nothing racist about it. And the guys that Trump kept out that were in that airport, they would have been cleared anyway. All he's saying is they have to be properly vetted, and they can't properly vet them from the countries that they're coming from because there is no way to do it properly. Now, when it comes to immigration, I get so upset about it because it's not immigration that they're trying to keep out. It is illegal immigration when it comes to the wall and our southern border. And I fought this battle a long time ago when Reagan was in power. And the thing about it was that the government promised us that when they give amnesty to what then was supposed to be around 3 million people that came across our southern borders, and it turned out to be 5 million people. They give amnesty to them, and Reagan promised us. We have it in a letter. My union fought this, and he said, we will keep the border safe after this week. It was the same argument that, we got to get them out of the shadows and all that. And he said, we'll keep the border shut down. A horned toad will have to give papers to get across the border. And you see how that worked out. Now I'm fighting the same battle over again, but now it's around 12 or 13 million, and it's probably more like 30 million.
Glenn, thanks for the call. Well, the Washington Examiner, to your point, is also reporting on what President Obama has done. It's available online at WashingtonExaminer.com. The headline, Obama mocks Trump, but has barred immigrants and many Muslims 6 times. The president has barred, President Obama, we should point out, has barred huge groups of potentially dangerous immigrants from entering the U.S. at least 6 times, undercutting his claim that barring Muslims from terrorist countries, as Donald Trump has proposed, is un-American. In his first ban, according to a search of White House records, Obama instituted a ban on immigrants or non-immigrants covered by a larger UN travel ban, also included those on an economic sanctions list, and most countries were Muslim. He cited the very same section of law that many critics of his policies have asked him to use, Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act, dating back to 1952. Elizabeth on the Republican line, welcome to the conversation from Savannah, Georgia. Good morning.
Good morning. First thing I'd like to say is Elizabeth Warren needs to take that self-righteous megaphone of hers and start telling people about the $1.3 million line of credit she has on her mansion. And where was she? Where was she when all these victims in San Bernardino, Fort Hood, Boston, Orlando, and now Fort Lauderdale, where was she when these people were crying out, these victims and the families of the dead? You didn't hear her voice then. I totally support what President Trump is doing. His number one job is to keep us safe. This is a temporary ban. All that we ask is that these people furnish their papers and tell us who they are. We ask the countries that they originate from to validate who they are. They won't turn over records, and that's why they're being detained. The buck stops here. I am tired of seeing American citizens and soldiers slaughtered because of an ideology. It has nothing to do with their religion. Their ideology is to kill Americans, the infidels. And right now in Savannah, Georgia, up under a bridge, is more than 100 disabled veterans living homeless under a bridge. I say charity starts at home. We need to take our money. We need to start taking care of the people that have fought and given their lives for us, who stood up in defense of our Constitution, so that all of us can call you on the phone and tell you what we think. We need to start taking care of our people, our refugees, and and our veterans before we start taking in other people that refuse, won't tell us who they are, can't validate who they are. I'm in total support of this. I'm tired of turning on the TV, and this is what President Trump said. These people are cutting heads off on TV. They're doing all kinds of things to people that we haven't seen since medieval times. There's as many people have died in Syria as did in the Jewish Holocaust. You need to stop and take a real good look in the mirror and face reality. These people have an ideology. They have been fighting and killing one another in civil wars for thousands of years. And until they can show us they have a love for our country, for our Constitution, and they're willing to come in and contribute, then I say keep them out. Tough luck.
Elizabeth?
Prove who you are.
We'll stop you there. Thank you for the call from Savannah, Georgia. The Washington Post has a different point of view, calling it an affront on American values, and the editorial in the Washington Post, pandering to fear. And British Prime Minister Theresa May, who met with the president on Friday before traveling to Istanbul, Turkey, through her spokesperson issuing a statement yesterday that reads in part as follows. Immigration policy in the United States is a matter for the government of the United States, just the same as the immigration policy for this country should be set by our government. But we do not agree with this kind of approach, and it is not one we will be taking. We are studying this new executive order to see what it means and what the legal effects are, and in particular, what the consequences are for UK nationals. If there is any impact on UK nationals, then clearly we will make representations to the U.S. government about that. Again, the spokesperson, Theresa May, who was at the White House on Friday and issuing this statement over the weekend. If you are just joining us, or if you're listening on C-SPAN Radio or Sirius XM, the POTUS channel, which carries this program every Sunday morning from 7 to 10 a.m., or watching on the BBC Parliament channel in Great Britain in the afternoon, we're talking about the refugee ban being called something that is chaos and confusion, according to a number of news outlets. So what do you think about what the president did on Friday and the reaction over the weekend? On the Democrats line, Paul is joining us from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Good morning.
Hello.
Go ahead, Paul.
I disagree with the ban. I called earlier, and you immediately cut him off. But what Trump is doing, he is banning.
Who did I cut off? I didn't cut anyone off.
Well, he says that Trump is the immigration law seems to be keeping out people of color. You immediately hit that button you had there. And he's keeping out people from Mexico. He's keeping out all of these Syrian people. This country has kept out all Haitian people. They have immigration laws, and they seem to apply to people who are of color. And the only thing this is how Trump wants to make America great again. And what some of these callers are calling in about I heard one guy talk about, his somebody in his family, I guess, was on a plane or something that with 9/11. But that was President Bush. He ignored all of the warnings that the CIA gave him. He ignored, and Trump is going to do the same thing. Trump is an idiot. He don't know what he's doing, and they're going to keep these airports closed. And these people, and that's the only reason this ban is going to be stopped, because when these airports are closed and international crisis takes place all over the world, then they will stop this ban. Thank you.
Paul, thanks for the call from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And this is from Nanette, who says, what did we expect from someone who had six bankruptcies, no moral compass, and no compassion for anyone but himself and his cronies? Chad says, far too long municipalities and state governments have been flippant to federal laws. From pot to immigration, these entities have been permitted to selectively enforce federal statutes as they see it. You can share your comments on our Facebook page at facebook.com/cspan. Maria from Westville, New Jersey, Independent Line. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. I think you're wonderful, and C-SPAN is wonderful. I have 4 points quickly. When Nancy Pelosi has tears in her eyes about the Statue of Liberty, it's a poem on the Statue of Liberty. It's not immigration policy. I wish she would have tears about American citizens and the rule of American law and sovereignty. For the people who say it's against people with dark skin, since 1965, I believe Senator Kennedy was involved, most of our immigration has come from non-European countries, and people can look that up if you want. The third point is I wish you would have Betsy McCaughey. She's the former lieutenant governor of New York.
We actually have had her on.
Yeah, well, she wrote an excellent article in the New York Post about 6 months ago about all the failures of the vetting system, and she went into details about that. And the fourth thing, Steve, could you have somebody in seriously to talk about the sedition acts for the mayors and other officials who aren't taking care of federal law? Because I think Mr. Trump is correct, until we know what we have in our country, which includes over 26 million illegals, if you look at immigration counters, that has all the cost there. So if you would have her on, and if this program that he proposes needs to be tweaked, so be it. But that doesn't mean his idea is wrong. And it's globalist versus nationalist, and we better wake up, America, all of us, whatever color, and have boundaries and a sovereign nation. And thank you so much.
Maria, thank you for adding your voice to the conversation. From the jump page of the New York Times, Trump's ban on refugees drawing deep anger and muted praise. Well, this editorial from the New York Times reads as follows: the unrighteousness of this new policy should be enough to prompt the courts, Congress, and responsible members of Mr. Trump's cabinet to reverse it immediately. But there is an even more compelling reason, writes the editorial board. It's extremely dangerous. Extremist groups will trumpet this order to spread the nation today more credible than ever that the United States is at war with Islam rather than targeting terrorists. They want nothing more than a fearful, recklessly belligerent America. So, if anything, this ban will heighten their efforts to strike at Americans, to provoke yet further overreaction from a volatile and inexperienced president. That editorial from the New York Times this morning. Fort Myers, Florida, Republican Line. Joe, your reaction to all of this. Good morning.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Sure. I don't want you guys to take offense to this, but I think the fact that you frame it Republican, Democrats, Independents line is drawing that divide that we see right now. We should.
So how would you frame it?
I would frame it whether or not you support the reported, or whether you support it or whether you oppose it. But the very fact, now you have people already calling, you already know what people are going to say, what they're going to talk about. I just want to say that, listen to some of the callers. I believe that most people would agree if they didn't have the Republican or the Democrat side, because who opposes the idea of a temporary ban? If people say they're Democrats and they oppose it, then they need to go back and research their history, because FDR did the exact same thing in World War II against the Germans and Japanese. It happened in World War I. It happened in the 1960s. We vetted some of the Russians out. So, and FDR is a hero to the Democrat Party. And President Obama was real strong in deportation with immigration issues.
I read the article from the Washington Examiner on that very point, exactly.
And so I think it's unfortunate and it's dishonest, and especially, let me say this as a black man, I am getting so sick and tired of black callers calling in and being the racial voice for a political party. Number one, that hasn't done anything for our race. Number two, that's not our job. That's the job of the immigrants to make that case. Now, while I respect immigration, we all are a nation of immigrants. There is a law and order that needs to be followed. And right now, we don't know who's coming in and who's not coming in. So before we say Trump is an idiot and all this other stuff, I think it's time for Americans, not President Trump, and President Obama did a hell of a job dividing us too, but Americans to sit down and have an honest conversation, and we'll never be able to do that as long as we have the D or the R. And if your next callers call in, and I challenge them to tell me whether or not this has happened before, because if it is, they need to shut up and just focus on how to make this country better together. Take care. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you. From inside the New York Times, a judge blocking Donald Trump's order on refugees amid the chaos and the outcry worldwide. Demonstrations developing in a number of airports across the United States, including JFK in New York, Dulles Airport in Northern Virginia, San Francisco, Seattle, Washington, and in Chicago. Meanwhile, the ACLU issuing a statement saying that it joined other legal organizations filing the lawsuit on behalf of individuals who were subject to the ban. The lead plaintiffs have been detained by the U.S. government and threatened with deportation, even though they have valid visas to enter the United States. More details from the ACLU website, which was behind the effort by at least two federal judges to block the ban. Debbie from Gainesville, Florida, Democrats line. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thank you for taking my call again. And I think it's important for your listeners to understand that President Trump really isn't a Republican. He's an independent. But because we have this two-party system that's failed us, he ran as a Republican. And we're in this situation because our elected officials went around the world for the last 4 or 5 decades propping up dictators, creating this problem. And Ross Perot said it with the NAFTA. As soon as you do this, you'll take all the jobs out of our country. And now we've got this situation where our salaries, the middle-class salaries, have remained 40 years, yet we're paying so much more for power, housing, food. And you have these globalists that have come in and taken over Washington. So now we basically just have a whorehouse. There's really no difference between a Republican and a Democrat. And the World Bank and Wall Street have the American people fighting against each other. And they're all the same. They're just there trying to divide us while they rob us blind. And so it's not comparing apples to apples when you talk about immigration back then than immigration now, when you have this terrorist groups going all over the world and having the problem that we have here. I don't have the solution, but term limits would be a place to start, because let's all look in the mirror and be honest. Our representatives go to Washington with maybe a few $100,000, and then within a few years they have millions. So they would not sell their soul to the devil. They would make decisions that would help the American people if they weren't being bought. So that's why we have to have term limits. Otherwise, they're going to continue the cycle of being bought out, and it's a whorehouse, and it's got to be stopped because our country's it's just eroding. And I don't know what the solution is other than start with term limits and put bans on procurement officers, that are purchasing all this stuff. But anyway, thanks for taking my call.
Debbie, thank you for the call. And this is from the Weekly Standard. Bill Kristol writing about country first and the statement by Donald Trump. Bill Kristol says, there are worse things to be remembered for than a party that put country first. From Hawaii, Valerie is next. Good morning, Republican line.
Good morning. First of all, I wish more people in the country, like everybody in this country, would watch C-SPAN, because you get the whole story without bias, without spin, and I think that we would have a more educated America if more people would watch you guys. And I feel like compared to the mainstream media, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, all of them, it's so biased both ways, and C-SPAN is the only place to go to see, actually, to watch these hearings and to watch everything so that you can see just exactly what's going on without just, most of the people protesting are reading like a headline, a skewed headline, not even understanding the whole story, and then they go out there and, I agree, first of all, I agree with Elizabeth totally, so I don't want to repeat everything she said, but in my opinion, Obama, for the last 8 years, we've had no one on the wall for us. He had the military, the Border Patrol, and the police stand down. We've had no one on the wall for us. We wouldn't be in this mess today if it wasn't for that. All Donald J. Trump is trying to do is restore law and order, which is desperately needed in this country. And I'm really sorry that we are so divided now, but it isn't the fault of Donald Trump. Obama did so much to divide this country, and we're in big trouble here, and he's going to get blamed for everything, but he's trying to restore law and order, which is really important. And I just want to say it's really spooky because there's just so much chaos and I blame almost everything on the media, and not you guys, but on the media, because they refuse to tell the truth. They refuse to tell the truth about all the crap that was going on with Obama for the last 8 years. If you weren't watching Fox or C-SPAN, you wouldn't see what was really going on. And I think the media is responsible for so much of this chaos just because they refuse to tell the truth. And keep up the good work.
Thank you, Valerie. What time is it there? About, 2:30, 2:45 in the morning?
You know what? It's C-SPAN's fault that I stay up too late all the time because I start watching congressional hearings or Washington Journal comes on, and then I stay up too late, then I oversleep, then I'm late for work. So I blame you for all my problems.
Well, thank you, Valerie. Keep watching C-SPAN.
Thank you so much. It's pretty late here. It's about, you asked me, it's almost 3.
Yeah, we'll send a note to your boss. Thanks for watching C-SPAN. We appreciate it.
I am my boss.
You take care. Oh, okay, well, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
From the New York Times, another look at the issue of immigration. This is the New York Times Sunday magazine. The only way we can fight back is to excel undocumented college students facing the dawn of the Trump administration. That this morning from the New York Times Sunday magazine. I want to reread from this morning's Washington Post just an excerpt of exactly what all of this means and the reaction that we saw yesterday. It's available online at WashingtonPost.com. Confusion and concern among immigrant advocates mounting throughout the day as travelers from the Middle East were detained at U.S. airports or sent home. A lawsuit filed on behalf of 2 Iraqi men challenged Trump's executive actions, which was signed on Friday, initially cast as applying to refugees and migrants. But as the day progressed, administration officials confirming that the sweeping order also targeting U.S. legal residents from the named countries, including green card holders who were abroad when it was signed. Also subject to being barred entry into the U.S. are dual nationals or people born in one of 7 countries who hold the passports, even from U.S. allies such as the United Kingdom. The virtually unprecedented measures triggering harsh reactions not only from Democrats but also key sectors of the U.S. business community. Leading technology companies recalling scores of overseas employees, sharply criticizing the president. Legal experts forecasting a wave of litigation over the order, calling it unconstitutional. Lawyers and advocates for immigrants are advising them to seek asylum in Canada. The headline this morning from the Washington Post is the refugee ban causing a furor worldwide. Let's go to the independent line. Michael from Connecticut, good morning. Your take on all of this.
Oh, hi, Steve. How are you today? Steve, you know, the interesting thing for me is that all of the calls that we've gotten to this point have missed the point entirely. The confusion that yesterday caused was the president issued an executive order and gave no one any instruction on how to implement it. Second of all, he wrote this executive order, I guess, by himself because no one from Homeland Security or from the National Security Organization in this country had any input to it, secondly. And then thirdly, people who had legitimate visas to enter this country, legitimate green cards issued by this country, had handcuffs put on them when they tried to enter the country. So he's not initiating law that exists. He has created new law, and out of new law comes confusion. And that's what we should expect now and going forward, because we know, because of our history, when you give Republicans full power, they overstep. And they have already overstepped, and they'll continue to overstep, and they'll step on their own necks. And in 4 years, they'll be gone, and we'll have another crew come in here that's going to have to fix it, because that's what they do, create a situation that has to be fixed. Last situation cost us $7 trillion.
Michael from Connecticut, thanks very much for the call. PBS NewsHour reporting this morning that the British Prime Minister Trudeau saying that he would accept those refugees banned by the United States. Turning to the Affordable Care Act, two stories we want to bring to your attention. First, from Bloomberg News, repeal and as the GOP grapples with how to craft a better version of Obamacare. And conservative columnist and writer Ramesh Ponnuru writing in National Review, a risky Obamacare strategy. Republicans are neglecting the replace part. Lisa from LaPorte, Pennsylvania, Democrats line, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for letting me speak. I just wanted to respond to some of the callers. First off, it was a Republican President Bush who was responsible for 9/11 because he didn't listen to what his advisors were telling him, especially the intelligence community, which Trump is following in the same footsteps. Secondly, he started a war based on lies with Iraq that harmed soldiers. Thirdly, the Republican Congress did not approve any additional support for vets that was submitted by the Democratic folks. Fourth, the refugees have valid visas, so this should be a non-starter and this whole issue shouldn't exist. And fifth, it's just Trump's right from the get-go, endless lies that half of America does not fact-check, endless lies. I'm just appalled. I fact-checked 3 different locations, so I don't take a personal opinion until I fact-check, along with his attacks on the media, on health care with no replacement, on women's rights, on minorities, and now with there's a motion in the House against Social Security and Medicare. It's just appalling, and I don't understand, because I think half the callers who seem to be so upset with, quote, liberal Democrats are not even looking at their own self-interest and what this country's about and what these issues are and what the facts are behind them and why so many people are up in arms across America.
Lisa, thanks very much for the call. We only have a few minutes, so I want to try to get a few more if we could. Appreciate your weighing in on all of this. The New York Times Sunday Magazine looking at the Dreamers, and you can see a photograph of one of those immigrants here from her parents, and this poster, "No human being is illegal." National Review also responding to the developments over the weekend. David French writes the following: the hysterical rhetoric about President Trump's executive order on refugees is out of control. Trump's order is not a betrayal of American values. Now is not the time for complacency. Now is the time to take a fresh look at our border control and immigration policies. Applied correctly and competently, it can represent a promising fresh start and a prelude to new policies that protect our nation while still maintaining American compassion and preserving American friendships. This is the headline this morning, courtesy of the Museum, as the judge blocking the ban from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Let's go to Karen in Lakeview, Oregon. Good morning, Republican line.
Good morning. I just wanted to say I think there's 2 things driving our immigration and refugee foreign policy. One of them is the Democrats. Normally, the Hispanic population and the Middle Eastern population, many of them vote Democrat, and I believe they're bringing in a lot of them for votes to make up for the lost votes they lost because of their liberal policies over the last 8 years. And the second one is this, and this is very important. I'm hoping that you guys will cover this topic later. They opened up American investing in Syria, Iran, and other Middle Eastern countries. I'm wondering if both parties aren't walking on eggshells around the refugees because they don't want to upset the apple cart and they want to have American investors in the Middle East. And I'm wondering how much of our foreign policy is due to the American investors over there. We are trying to disconnect with the oil. Trump wants to make America energy independent, yet we're tying ourselves to those countries again through American investors. I'm hoping you guys will cover this topic in the future.
Karen, thanks for the call. Pete Wehner of the Ethics and Public Policy Center, a veteran of the Bush White House, will be joining us in just a couple of minutes to get his reaction to the legacy of Barack Obama and, more significantly, the start of the Trump presidency. Gary is joining us from Fletcher, North Carolina. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I found it interesting. The caller said that the "Give us, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry" is just a poem on the Statue of Liberty. It's not the Constitution. I thought that was really neat. But what's happening right now is they have to realize when Obama deported a lot of people, it's because he deports them as soon as they catch them down in these border states. They get deported like the same day they get found over the line. It's not like he went into the country and was dragging people out of their homes. The high numbers are, they just count the people they catch right over the line that day. That's just a turnaround deportation. But as far as the illegals go, my competition in business hires illegals, and I could not keep in business until I started hiring them myself. And I want to apologize to Americans that were trying to do their best to get jobs that I did this. And I do feel ashamed of myself, but that's the situation that I'm in right now. I just can't compete with my competitors unless I hire two. So it's just a terrible mess we're in, and I think Trump's doing a good thing by trying to put the brakes on this before it's really too late. And I feel really sorry for immigrants and people that don't have it really good where they're from. I'm sorry it's like that, but it's not a sin to be poor. And we should be grateful for what God gave us and not want more and more and more and what we see over there.
Gary, thanks for the call. Let's go to Terry from California, Democrats line. I'll show you two headlines from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Chronicle and the San Jose Mercury newspaper. Good morning, Terry. Quick comment.
Yes, I am extremely nervous, so I apologize. Basically, what I want to say is that this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for two reasons. Well, obviously, there's a lot more reasons, but basically, the way that President Obama has had this war where there's no boots on the ground, and that's because Americans don't want that, right? So basically, but at the same time, that means that we also don't feel it. What's actually happening in these countries that we are bombing, I mean, nonstop. I think it's 7 countries. And then the Republicans on the other side, they won't approve any assistance, any money, spending, sometimes that's important, for the veterans. They just won't do it, and that's just based on their ideology, extreme ideology. So
Terry,
what happens...
Oh, go ahead. Final point.
So
go ahead, Terry.
That's it. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you very much for the call. And this is the story this morning from the New York Times as Trump and Putin connect but avoid talk of lifting U.S. sanctions. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back,